Welcome to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, where owners of privately held middle market companies talk about founding, scaling, and exiting their businesses successfully. Learn how to maximize and monetize your business on your own terms. Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Heather Bennett, your host for the Growth Plus Exit podcast, where we feature business owners talking about founding, scaling, and sometimes exiting their businesses. Past guests on the Growth Plus Exit podcast include Kelly Schrod, founder of DataVision, Jody Jankowski, CEO of Blackline, and Jeff Janicek, founder of InnoFlight. This episode is brought to you by Newport LLC, a team of seasoned C-suite executives who have helped and continue to help CEOs of privately held companies grow, de-risk, and exit their businesses successfully. To learn more about Newport, find us at newportllc.com or reach out to us on LinkedIn. Before introducing today's guests, I would like to thank Matt Vukov for introducing me to Tom. You can learn more about Matt by listening to one of our earlier episodes on the Growth Plus Exit podcast, where I interviewed him about founding TalentCraft, which it was a really exciting and really interesting interview. So I hope you'll go ahead and listen to that episode as well. Today's guest, Tom Parker, is the co-founder of Alined Consulting Group, an IT company founded in 2021 that offers staffing and software engineering services. Tom has over 20 years of consulting and staffing services and specializes in implementing enterprise applications across diverse industries. Align Consulting Group focuses on improving client operations through technology and process enhancement. Tom is also on the board of Elevate, a networking and professional development group for senior IT leaders and executives. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Heather. Appreciate it.
So tell me about how you started Aligned and your co-founder.
Sure. So good story. A couple things came together at the right time. So we all kind of remember what was happening in 2020 and you had the pandemic. And both my co-founder and I were working in other jobs at that time. And the market was very volatile. If you think of the spring, like May, June of 2020, when we were all locked down for COVID. And the organization I was with was exiting out of the Chicago market in that fall. And so Brendan and I got connected and I was kind of deciding, what am I going to do next? And we're watching the market. And, I think if you look back through history trends within consulting and staffing, you can kind of see some things happen during the dot-com bubble of 2001, market crash in 2008. And we saw a lot of similar things happening in 2020 where, the consulting and staffing world, no one's recession proof, but it's a little recession retardant in the sense that you take a hit, but you started to see it come back and friends and people that were with some large organizations, we were ramping, the demand is increasing. Now, I never could have anticipated what 2021 was going to look like or even the beginning of 22. So Brendan and I started talking and we were very fortunate that we had also connected with some angel investors that kind of believed and trusted with our vision. And we basically said hey, if we're going to do it, let's do it now, right? One of the things I always talk about timing in business and when you start. So we were very fortunate to kind of find the right time so we could catch that kind of initial wave, where it was for the first time in my career, it was easy to work with businesses where they were coming to you. Business development almost wasn't a thing in a weird way during that first year, which was awesome. And it's good and bad to it, right? Because as we started to hire, people didn't know what the market was going to shift to. But Brendan and I go back almost 18 years now. We had started our career at a great company called Insight Global when they were small. Got to watch them go from 30, 40 million. When I left, they were over $1 billion 9 years later, which was a really, really good run. And very fortunate to see a company go through that type of accelerated growth. So he was actually my mentee when we came in. I was his mentor, as his account manager, and so built a relationship. And then we worked there together for about 5 years in the office. He went off and started another office for them, and then broke off. And always had stayed in touch over time. But when the fall of 20, so it would have been September of 2020. And it was kind of like exiting my company and what to do next. Before I had reached out to Brendan, I got to give credit to my wife, because I was sitting on the couch going, I think I want to do my own thing, but I'm old enough now to know I don't know a lot of things and I have a lot of skill gaps. And so it was like, who in my network could ultimately share the same vision, but also fill a lot of those gaps where we believe in the same things foundationally, but very different people. And Brendan became that person. And she was the one, she's like, you got to call Cody. I call him Cody. It's his last name, but you got to call Brendan. He's the one that's going to come in and, fire up the team. And it's not that I don't care about people, but, wears his heart on his sleeve and focuses a lot on their employees and like, how are we going to do that? How are we going to build a team and a culture that's fun? And so it just ended up to be an awesome partnership, that's obviously continued to today.
That's amazing. So you talked about having angel investors when you started the company. What was that process like? How did they find you, or how did you find them? And what was it like working with them?
Yeah, so they have been phenomenal and really out of the operational weeds of the organization for the most part. Now that this was probably a little bit of diversification, a new market that they hadn't entered, so we had to do a lot of education before I think they felt it was going to be comfortable. Knowing their background, and there were relationships that and I had through my network over a 10+ year period, and so it wasn't something that I think we were seeking out. It just kind of came together organically as we started talking. And maybe the little push from them is I was looking at my last place and we were in talks of like, oh, maybe, do we start something, try to buy something and scale and grow it? And when we sat down and kind of educated them on the market and what we thought was going to happen, I think that made a big difference, right? But it really was organic. It wasn't like I need to find investors. You don't have to. But we were fortunate because not only did they get us through some growth pains, in the beginning, but obviously to kind of slingshot us like during 2020 and 2021 was a really fantastic opportunity.
Awesome. So tell me about, what about, you'd already talked a little bit, but what about starting a company in 2021 was easy or hard?
So the business side of it, well, I guess let me back up. So number one, you don't know what you're doing, right? Outside of like, can I file an LLC and can we get that stuff done? And then you put together a website and you probably harp on things that don't matter in the really early stages. I remember Brendan to this day makes fun of me because I wanted to like bring every system together that's seamlessly connected, that API that was going to be beautiful so we could scale. And not that was a bad thing, but I probably spent too much time like harping on that. And it's just like, just start and go, right? I think hiring is always the big challenge in the beginning. Those like first couple hires, like who should it be? We were still trying to figure out from a company, what type of organization do we want to be? We knew we wanted to be a growth-based business, but do we go hire some more senior talent? Do we just bring in more junior folks? Kind of straddled that too much the first few years of like, we were playing in both sides of the world and versus picking one path and going. And that's what we've done today. So I think just those typical like first year were, when and how do we hire and who do we hire was tough. We knew the business side of it. We knew how to do business development. We knew how to deliver for clients. Not that's easy because that's ultimately how you make your money, but that was at least something that we knew, right? And then you have all the fun stuff of I deal with, the state of Kansas, and then, we're in New York, and then Florida and Illinois, and every state's different. And that happened very quickly. And that was a lesson, right, of lots of paperwork and on the phone for a lot of times of how different states worked and how you have to operate in different states. That was I think from a personal side, my wife and I don't know if we joke about it or laugh, but we started the company in 21. At the time we had 2 kids under 2. They were 18 months or just had turned 2 and 6 months old. So, a lot of it was relying on my wife, right? Especially for those first few years to be like, hey, I'm going to go do this. You're the breadwinner. You're going to, keep us afloat as I start this company. But, who's going to do drop off? Who's going to pick up the kids? Like, how do I work and make the money while you try to build the business? And so, Forever grateful for her kind of picking up the slack. But then and to this day, it's a challenge, right? As you still go and work, and how do you do it, and how do you manage the kids and the personal life while trying to build the business? And I think that's probably the most difficult thing. Sometimes you get into the X and O's of client acquisition and delivery. It's like, I know that, I can do that. That's just hard work, and you got to put it in the grind and to deliver for your clients.
Yeah, yeah, it's always interesting to hear like the support systems that people you need when you're starting a new business, and it's not just you. You're not alone, and to be successful, you do have to rely on and trust other people. And I love that you mentioned too the importance of hiring correctly those first couple of hires, and
Yeah.
how it's just such a bigger percentage of impact on your business than when you're 1,000-person company.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear you mention how important that was.
It's important, and we learned a lot, right? We had, a couple wins and a couple misses. And you got to think of there's a lot of factors when you ask people to join your business for the first time. I think in the beginning, you're grateful someone says yes to a certain extent. You're like, oh, you want to join me on this journey? That's amazing, right? And you don't always have the rigor, and the systems aren't in place, and the processes aren't in place. Although you kind of have to build it as you go, and there's a laundry list of 1,000 things you want to do, but kind of constantly reprioritizing. Okay, what I want to do today, and what I do this week, this month, and this year, it is tough because there's the improvements are everywhere, right? And it's like, how am I balancing someone that ultimately has a little bit of that entrepreneurial spirit, to come with us, as well as some experience, the right person for the culture. And I think you learn, even being in staffing services for 20 years, there's just misses sometimes, right? And then there's victories that you don't know are going to be great, as much as you go through a long interview process, and that's just kind of part of it.
So let's talk about the things that you didn't know. What were some of the surprises or the turning points, the roadblocks that you didn't expect while building the business?
Yeah, so I think that there was a couple things that happened in like year 2 and 3 that were a little bit different, right? Coming out of the gates, Brendan and I basically banked on our network of almost 20 years of experiences within the industry, that we knew there was this Rolodex of people that we had cultivated. We felt like we had great relationships with. They trusted us, right? And they knew that we were going to have their best interest. And just that saying, hey, I know these people will take my call. I don't know if they'll have an opportunity, right? Out of the gates, but we found that there was a window in the beginning where people were really gracious, and they knew you were starting, and they wanted to help. So outside of like the personal side, just people, client and partners and friends that were like, I'll give you a shot. If you can come in and deliver, I get it. You're starting something new, and maybe I'm the guinea pig and I'll be an early adopter, but they knew it, and we were transparent that, we were pushing ourselves in some of these projects, initiatives that were outside of our initial scope. And those were great because they built fantastic case studies today, and we have great reviews on that. I think, once you came out of that bubble of 21, 22, 23 was a shift, right? And it was a shift for us internally. We went from the intake and the pipeline and delivery was very difficult, and I think for most companies to keep up with and demand, and also the prices just within what you had to pay talent, and that was hiring internally here as well as for our clients. It felt like a bubble, and then it started to burst a little bit, and that kind of carried from 23 into a little bit of like 24, is that market correction. And it's still going on now. You see the softening. The job market has definitely softened, since then. Rates have come down or stagnated, a little bit along with inflation. So that was a shift. We went from, we have to be delivery focused all the time because that's what our clients needed to be, to, hey, where's the next project coming from? And are we planning ahead? And probably looking back, we weren't as focused on the business development side in the longer term during 22 and 23 as we should have been, because we were keeping up, and it seemed great at that time, right? And so hiring became more of a delivery focused. We have since shifted that completely, right, to hiring is much more of a sales business development focused, right? Build the pipeline, build it till it almost like breaks, and deliver, and we're seeing the fruits of that labor now as we continue to grow, the rest of this year and scale, which is awesome. But that's that's a learning lesson. I don't, I deliver for clients first. But I think, looking back, we should have figured out how do you do this both at the same time, right? And our risk tolerance seemed a little bit higher. We were very focused on, partially because I think we did have investors and wanting to give them return. Like, are we building a good, sustainable, profitable business? And we were. We should have kind of taken that and thrown it out the window a little bit of like, let's just focus way more on top line, out of the gates. Like, yeah, we'll be profitable and you can break even, but let's push. And that's a shift we made, kind of at the end of last year, early this year.
So talking about growing and scaling, what is your vision for the company going forward?
Yeah.
What impact do you see you guys making on the industry?
So good question again. I think I kind of look at it two ways. I'll answer it first as far as like going forward. And this hasn't changed since we sat down and kind of whiteboarded out the organization to start off. Brendan and I really had a 15-year vision. And I think there's two types of companies out there, right? And both are fantastic. It's just what you want to be. I think there are lifestyle businesses that ultimately grow, and they grow at a nice clip every year. You typically see people being there for a long time, right? There's not much change, but they do good for their clients and they grow. And then there's growth-based businesses that, scale and push growth quickly. We've always wanted to be a growth-based business, right? And get to that point where we're kind of hockey sticking, the growth up. And the reason for that is Brendan and I get the biggest enjoyment out of watching the people we hire be successful. I mean, ultimately, we're in the service-based industry, right? So whether that's delivering more value for our clients or hiring and watching the people we hire become successful and building kind of that team, and then watching them go on to get promoted and do that, that's how we'll measure success at the end of the day. Now, the growth of the business will come after that. More people we can hire to make successful, the bigger the business grows. So we had a 15-year vision, for the company. As basically the first 3 to 5 years, which we're ending now, is like, hey, let's set the foundation, right? Do we have the right people? Do we have the right people on the bus? To kind of use a Jim Collins reference, like, yes, we have that now. Now, where are we going? And the amount of case studies that we've done for clients now, whether that's building large teams or implementing large technologies and optimizing and roadmaps and assessments, and now AI is the big thing. So we have an awesome foundation now, and we really had that at the end of last year to be able to say, now I can go into more Fortune 1000, more Fortune 500 and 100 clients and go, look what we're doing over here. How can that be applicable? The next 3 to 5 years is all going to be about scale and growth. I think that's all what we're going to care about, and that whether we take additional investment, in 3-4 years, and I don't know the answer to that, to visit PE or VC or where you go or switch out. That's definitely potential. But the next 3 to 5 years is all just about how fast can we grow the company and be extremely aggressive there. Not only in our internal hiring, but like how we acquire clients, how we push ourselves internally. And then the last kind of 3 to 5 years is what's next. I don't think Brendan and I have any desire to sell the company, outright. Not that we wouldn't. I think everyone's got a price at the end of the day, but it's not on the roadmap now. I think it would be fun to kind of leave it to that next generation and be like, you guys run it now. Personally, my kids will kind of be ending high school at that time, and it will be nice to kind of maybe walk back into more of a advisory role, right? Get out of the operations and do that. And I say that now, I don't know. Talk to me in 10 years and I could completely change my mind and say, no, I'm having fun. I want to do this forever. But I think that's the plan right now.
No, and I think that's one of the interesting things that you've learned in your entrepreneurial journey over the last 3 years is that you can make your plans and everything, but you don't always know the answers, and it's okay. Like having that higher level of risk is perfectly okay, especially if you're pushing for high levels.
Yeah,
There
I
has
think
to
that,
be a risk tolerance there.
yeah, and I had a great business mentor of mine, one of the gentlemen that founded over at Insight, Rich Lingle. He's been very gracious with his time and talking to me occasionally and kind of breaking down the business. Like, what are you going to do? And one thing is he said at the end of last year is he's like, what do you want to be? Right now you're growing, that's great. But he's like, if you want to grow, Tom, you have to change your risk tolerance. That's exactly what he said. And he's like, and you're gonna have to push and you have to hire faster. I think I knew it, hearing it from a mentor is always nice. It's someone else, you're like, yeah, I did. And then we kind of flipped the model on its head a little bit of how we're going to grow. So I totally agree.
So tell me about some of your proudest moments so far.
So I think that there's a couple things, and I know you mentioned the Elevate program, coming in, and I'll talk about that. But I think going back and a couple of the proudest moments starting off is when we do a lot of hiring right out of school. So folks coming in right out of college, right? And we're all in that bucket where you graduate and you think you know a lot, and then you get in the real world and you're like, I don't know anything yet. And that's perfectly okay. So watching them come in from day one, being very green, uh, training them, watching them develop, hold them highly accountable. One of my things is I'm pretty transparent with everybody. So usually I have to find ways to soften some of my feedback sometimes. But watching them, be successful, deliver that first time for that client, push themselves out of their comfort zone, watching their commission check, increase and being like, I don't know where I'm going to be next year. And then, double or triple their income within a year is pretty fantastic. Right. So those are always, the most fun. I think watching the team take on larger initiatives all the time, because there's always going to be something bigger, and every client's going to go, well, have you done this before? To some extent, I don't care if you're Align Consulting or you're Deloitte, there's going to be something new that's come up. And the bigger question is, do you have the capability? Do you have the right talent internally to be able to take this challenge on? Right. And so watching them push themselves and also hold themselves accountable to say, I need help over here, or we need to bolster up the team, or I don't really have that skill set. So we're going to have to bring someone different in to support our clients. I think those are extremely rewarding. On the Elevate side, we started that. We really didn't have an intention of doing it when we started the business. It was really a response from the market in like 22, because I'd run networking groups before, and it was great. It just we didn't think we were going to do it, but as the world was kind of coming back together in COVID, we said like there seems to be demand for this. So watching it get started, just with our network of 50, 75 people that signed up on our first list, and now we're approaching like 1,000 members in Chicago. We've opened up a second chapter in Columbus that's got over 150 members. We'll have 12 events this year. Our workshops now, get packed with speakers, as well as people that want to come in where we have to cap them off and say, sorry, there's no seats left. That's pretty powerful to watch that group. And we don't do it alone. We need a lot of the help from our board of advisors, as well as some key members. But clearly there's something of value that they're seeing in the group, which is great. That's by design, right? That they're pulling something awesome out of it. That they're learning something new every time. They're meeting someone new, and watching that group grow, and watching the caliber of our events get better and better. And a lot of that's attributed to my team, and we have someone on our team named Bethany that runs a lot of those events and just puts them on really professionally. Is great to see, and now you kind of wonder like, well, where do we take it? How good can it get? And what else do we want to be? And those are fun questions to ask.
Okay, so for the benefit of listeners, maybe describe or pitch Elevate. Like who should join? Why would they join? What the purpose of it is?
Yeah, so Elevate is really a professional development and networking group for senior IT leaders here in Chicago and Columbus. So we do not charge for it. It's a free service. The charge is ultimately, that you are giving up your time, right, to come to the events and network for other people. We put on 12 events a year. 8 of those are small, intimate roundtable. We cap those off, usually around 15 people. There's a speaker or a leader for that conversation, a wide variety of IT topics, ranging from what's going on from data harmonization to cloud costs and moving there, to a slew of AI initiatives or Gen AI and how companies are tackling those. And so 8 are small, intimate roundtable, 15 people a year, very discussion based. Then we do 2 workshops a year, and those are always what's the latest and greatest going on in technology. We have one coming up October 15th. It's on data bottlenecks and taking that to scalable AI solutions. And we'll have 4 great speakers. We work through the speakers, then we have industry breakout sessions followed by a lunch. It's a jam-packed 5 hours from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then we get out of there. But the hope that we leave people with wanting more. And then we do 2 fun happy hours a year, obviously, where you bring colleagues, significant other. Those are always a big hit, of course. One in the summer and the one as we approach the holidays here. So, it's a great way for CIOs and VPs, right? We have some directors in the group to come connect outside of, the four walls of their organization to talk about the challenges they're having, to debate, right? To discuss. And it's you get a couple different formats so people can figure out where do they thrive in that format. We've all been to the big conferences, right, that get put on, and those are great. It's hard to connect on a more intimate level there unless you get into the smaller groups. So we try to provide some of that. So you're saying like, hey, listen, you're not going to go to a conference and hand out your business card to 50 people and think you made 50 connections, right? You're going to go make 2 or 3. Have meaningful conversations, connect with the people that you think are going to add value. You see someone across the table that's in the same industry, probably good for you guys to talk, right? Or a similar size company, like, hey, we're going through those challenges. How did you do that? And this allows us to provide the vehicle to individuals, especially as we're trying to partner on consulting or staffing services. So like, hey, maybe you have nothing going on right now. That's fine. I still want an avenue for me to add value to you. And then, lastly, this is by accident, but it's a great way for people to get new jobs. They come and they're like, oh, I got a call from, this company. I'm not interested, but you might be a great fit. And the community is extremely supportive of each other as people are transitioning in and out of jobs, saying, let me connect you with other people, right? That just looked or looking, right, to share and see if you can, find a new job that way.
I love that. And it's so important to build those communities and really support the other people in your business. I think that's where we talk about like the growth, but I think that's really also growing the industry and the opportunity, which is great. At Newport, we think of ourselves as lifelong learners. We're always learning new things, always reaching out to how do you how are you a lifelong learner? Where do you get information from? Who do you rely on, or what do you listen to? What do you view to keep up? I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, there's a lot going on in your industry and it's moving at an increasingly rapid pace. So how do you keep up with all of that?
It's tough, right? I think for everyone now, and it's accelerating. It's funny. Every 6 months, I look back at Tom 6 months ago, and Tom's an idiot 6 months ago. I don't know anything, and look at the slew of mistakes I have, and it's always funny. Like that's 6 month. Today, Tom beats Tom 6 months ago every single day of the week, right? I think a couple of people say similar things, but I I try to read a good amount, right? So outside of your standard, like, your Inc. magazines, your Harvard Business Review, grabbing those on the plane, I do that. I do have to commute in the car a lot. So unfortunately, like the books that I'll read turn into audiobooks now, which I don't love. But it's better than nothing, right? So always have one of those going in the background. I think podcasts like this, online, there's a couple that, we mentioned, whether it's, how I built this for the first few years of the company. I was listening to that almost daily to rip through as many episodes as possible. Diary of a CEO is another great one. And then I think now the biggest challenge with everything that's going on in AI is just tinkering with it yourself. I was fortunate to be on a call with another group that Mark Cuban was on, and people were asking him questions, and he was talking about how much he just tinkers himself. And one of the things he said was, he's like, no one's going to come in and just solve this for you. He's like, you have to be able to get into the weeds. You have to understand it as an owner. And he's like, I spend an hour a day just messing around with it, trying to figure it out. And he's like, yeah, I'll need architects and people to go in to implement, but just to get those ideas going. And I think that's, you got to just do it sometimes, right? And so it's a combination of all those. I think to try to stay ahead is, trying some vibe coding out for the first time on Replit. I don't know that. I don't know how to do that. But you got to figure it out. And then, messing around in ChatGPT, like how far can I push this engine? And I find, especially over the last 6 months, the productivity level has increased greatly, right? That you can use some of those tools to do it, right? It's not replacing someone at work, but I'm becoming much more productive, and it's garnering insights, even to audit my own business at times. So being like, give me a brutal audit. And I love it because it just hammers you and says, you're not doing this, you should do this. This is laughable. I'm like, this is great. That's what I'm kind of looking for, right? And how would I make those tweaks and edits there? So I think it's a combination, but I do love reading. I wish I could read more. Dan Brown came out with a new book and I wanted to buy it, but I have like 4 other business books that I wanted to read beforehand. So eventually I'll get to that historical fiction, which is a guilty pleasure, but it's going to be a couple months.
And I find that's common. There's a good balance between fiction and nonfiction, to help keep your creative brain working, but also to learn. So
Yeah.
great answer.
We'll
Very, very
say,
solid.
yeah, I will say I feel, especially with a wife that works and has a big job, that becomes a great sounding board. And sometimes I don't have the ears for it, where she's like, "You messed that up. Yeah, you didn't do that." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And then I hear it back. I'm like, "Oh, I should have done it differently." Um, and having that partner throughout it that is a great sounding board, but also can be honest and caring, and at the same time is awesome. And I think even my partner knows. He'd be like, "Go talk to your wife. She's going to tell you, you don't have the right idea." So
Excellent advice. Go talk to your spouse.
yeah,
We'll
go
add
talk.
that
They'll tell
we'll
you.
add that in the notes. Make sure you talk to your
Yeah.
spouse. I like that. So speaking of advice, who are your mentors? And tell me about some of the best advice you've gotten. I know you mentioned one before, but who are your mentors and what advice have you gotten from them?
Yeah. So I think that I feel very fortunate that there's, I'll quote my mom for it. My mom always used to say that, people come into your life for a reason or a season. I don't know if she stole that from someone else or not. But I've been pretty fortunate to have, coaches, the swimming and water polo in college that were tough on me, that would kind of be like sounding boards of advice, and I mentioned the one gentleman, throughout my first few years of working, first decade of working, that continues to take the calls, have been great. So I think that, it depends, where I am and what's going and what that challenge is, but still being able to call back onto, those coaches and hearing it, because they're always going to tell you straight up, right? Once a coach, always a coach, type thing. A couple business mentors of people that, have done it, our investors, while they're angel and they're out of the operational stuff, have been an awesome sounding board. Like, have you ever thought about this? Have you ever done this? And then, even Matt, right? Our relationship came kind of by accident, where I was reaching out trying to hiring him and didn't know he'd started his own business at the same time, and have a couple friends that have become good friends like Matt, where we still get together on a quarterly basis. And we're like, "What are you seeing? What's going on?" Right. And that's not a formal mentor mentee relationship, but I feel I learned so much from Matt in those conversations, just because you're getting another perspective. And also, people are going through this kind of, he's a couple years ahead of me in his business, a few years ahead. And they're like, "Oh, what are you doing? How are you challenging it?" And I think you realize you're like, no one like has a playbook or knows. You just got to figure it out every step of the way. And there's no one that's going to be like, "Now you got to do this. Now you got to do this." It's like, you don't know. Right. So you figure it out, but to have that kind of collective community of other owners, other people that, started companies, and some people on the other side of it that have sold them. That they're just like, "Yeah, that's a challenge. You're going to have to figure it out." And how would you do that? Like, I don't know. It's a little unique, but here's the steps I would take to go and, like, put a solution together. Right. So it's been in stages, right, throughout that whole time.
No, it's such great advice to build a community of co-mentors to help each other along in the process. I think that's a great idea. Um, so what are some of the daily rituals or life hacks that you use, to tackle these challenges that help you handle the fact that you just don't know which challenges are going to come your way?
Yeah. Let me go back. I just wanted to say one more thing from the mentors that sticks with me. And this came from a college coach, Kathleen Malloy, that had said one time, because I swam in college and then I got cut from the team because I wasn't very good. But maybe about a year later, I stayed on as a student assistant coach for the next 3 years. And one thing that she said to me is, I was like, "I always thought, because I worked really hard, that I deserved success." And she was like, "A lot of people think that. I'm a hard worker. I deserve it." And I think that's what we tell each other, but that's not the way the world works, right? The hardest worker a lot of times does get success, but deserving it or believing that you deserve it just because you work hard, they don't go hand in hand. You got to go out and take it, right? So I think that sits with me. It's like, yeah, I can count the hours that I worked. Kind of doesn't matter in a weird way, right? It's like, are you going to go at the end of the day, step up and take it? And I think that's important. And I think people confuse that. And I know I did for a long time, of like, hard work and success and deserving. It's not that you're not deserving, but don't believe that just because you work hard that it's just automatically going to come, right? Because there's going to be different headwinds. So sorry, I thought of that as you mentioned that.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I always define success as a combination of both hard work and luck. And you have to do the hard work so that when that moment of opportunity comes, to your
Yeah.
point, you take it. And that's
Okay.
luck. But
Yep.
you have to do the hard work so that when it comes, you're ready. And I love the fact that the way you talk about it as being you take it, as you take that opportunity. Um, but that's
Yeah,
a great way to look at it.
and there's no substitute for hard work. You have to like
No.
go through the muck, right? Like I
Mhm.
call it just going through the muck. I mean, there's other words you could use for it, but you just that's what it is. I've never met anyone that's successful that is like, yeah, I didn't have to work very hard. It just kind of came. Like I've never heard that. You just hear like it's a grind, and maybe some are luckier than others, or their business scaled faster or slower. But like end of the day, like, yep, there's going to be some late nights and hard conversations and anxiety and imposter syndrome. You name it, it's all there. The only way to get through it is just confront it and work through it and work hard and keep working hard, and you'll get more and more of those opportunities, and then you got to take it. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll go back to the question.
Sorry.
Daily rituals, life hacks to help keep you strong and agile and ready to tackle those surprises.
I'm a big routine guy, probably to a fault. And so I enjoy working out, right? And so I think that, probably 6 days a week, I'm either going for a run or I'm at the gym, but that's got to be early in the morning. So there's no way to do that at night with little kids. So at all. So it's up at 5, get the workout in. And then my wife and I have a shared calendar that some of our friends, laugh at. That's like, we have it planned through January at this point. I'm like, nope, you have to drop off the kids that Friday because I'm traveling. And so it's that routine, or I'm out of town, or you got to do this, or you have to take the doctor's appointment, right? And so, but that bleeds over into business as well. So like, I got to get a workout in. I would love to meditate more. It comes and goes, but that's kind of my time to meditate, to just like, I'm not listening. I don't have my phone on, take that hour in the morning. Unfortunately, most people aren't calling at 5:30 in the morning, so I'm okay. But take an hour, get a workout in, come back, shower change, then we're routine at work, right? We have a standing 8 a.m. call every day. Let's get the blood flowing, let's get going and kick off the day. What do we have to work on for our clients? What's due today? What's due tomorrow? What are we working on this week? And that's the way we layer in our training, right? So big routine. I don't know how to do anything unless I build it into my routine. So if you tell me, now I want you to go do AI training. Like, okay, where's that getting scheduled? How is it getting done? If it doesn't get on the calendar, it's not going to get done, right? And even some personal stuff as well. It's not sitting there; it doesn't get done. So I think that's my hack. Is that like, if I want to do something, you have I'm going to probably mess this quote up, right? But like, it's the old, you can do anything you want, but you can't do everything you want, right? So it's picking up, you have the time of day to do anything you want in there. It's just, how are you reprioritizing that, right? And so it's like, I got, the hours I'm going to work, I'm going to spend some time with some family. Obviously, you need to sleep somewhere in there, but if it doesn't make it into my calendar and then it doesn't get consistently in there, it's never going to happen.
I know. So it's great advice and a really good example of realistically how you get things done and prioritize what's important.
Yeah, I don't know how people do it other ways. I know people do, and they find their own path, and that's good for them. But I can't wrap my mind around it when you're like, how did you do that? Where is it built? How did you find time? And yeah, no, it's got to be so routine.
It's wonderful. We have an awareness now that people are, have diversified ways of learning information. I think they also have diversified ways of tackling their days.
Yeah,
And one way that works for someone is not going to work for someone else. So the key is spending the time and the thoughtfulness to figure out what's going to work for you.
yeah.
And not an easy task when you're building a business from scratch. So,
No, it's not. And I think that, now you can even go into, ChatGPT, and you can have it send you reminders and updates. And I use that as an agent, right, as well, too. It's like, don't forget to do this today, even if it's on it, or it's something that's not going to sit on the calendar, but like goals, a daily reminder of the goals this month. that pops up in my, my phone, in the morning at 7 a.m. It's like, all right, we did do, this run rate by this point. How are we tracking to that? And I can give it updates. So there's tools to help, but it still has to be somewhat of a routine,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do have one last question.
Yeah.
But before I ask it, I want to point people to your website. It's Align, so ALINED consulting.com, or you can find Tom and Aligned, of course, on LinkedIn. So the last question is, and I know you've shared so much already, what is one hard lesson that you would love to share with future entrepreneurs to help them as they start out?
I think I think the biggest lesson, and I don't think I'm unique, is like just start, right? It's scary. You will not know everything. No one does going into it, and that is totally fine. And don't expect that anyone's going to know or have the answer for you, right? You're just going to have to figure it out. There's beauty in that, right? Of being like looking back over the last 4 years and being like, God, we didn't know how to do all this stuff, but now we know how to do it, right? And the next 4 is going to be different. We're going to have different challenges as we grow that, we haven't existed before. But I just say, like, the only way to get past that is you just got to start. Once you go down those rabbit holes of like, I don't know how to do this, but you start picking up the phone or researching or, talking to people, you'll get enough to figure out how to do it. But don't let that stop you if that's what you really want to do.
Excellent. Great advice. I've been talking with Tom Parker of Alined Consulting. Tom, thank you so much for your time today and for everything you shared. This has been such a pleasure.
Pleasure. My pleasure, Heather. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, sponsored by Newport, a unique national business advisory firm. If you enjoyed this show, be sure to share, like, and subscribe for future episodes.